My name is Laimonas Ragauskas. I'm coming from Lithuania, from Vilnius. I'm from the NGO Nectarus, which is dealing with the development of the youth worker competences mainly. I'm also working with the company called Batchcraft, which is dealing with the edutech solutions in the field of youth work and education. I'm also a member of International Guild Youth Work Trainers, and also I'm freelancing, so I'm wearing different hats at different moments. I think it started from more or less 2009, 2010, when me and my colleagues in Lithuania were looking for some innovative solutions aiming to recognize outcomes of non-formal learning and youth work. And we started looking at digital solutions because we wanted to have something youthful and visual. And we started looking at digital solutions, and we found out about open digital badges, which is a digital tool in a way, and a digital way to approach recognition. And once we started digging deeper into what kind of technology it is, and we started building a platform to issue digital badges for young people, for youth workers, to recognize their learning, then naturally the interest was there. Since then, I started also digging deeper, what are the other solutions, what are the tools, what are the approaches that can be useful in the field of youth work and training as well. So that's how it all started, and until now I'm looking for what is new up there, what are the new solutions, what are the new tools, and what can be useful in the field of youth work. Well, I can speak for myself. I think, how did I perceive different panels, different speakers and topics coming up? Each panel was really interesting and was always some kind of new thing and perspective and new link that was shared that I can go there and dig deeper. I can name a few. There was one panel focusing on digital sustainability. This is not the topic we talk often. So for me it was also interesting to see what is the digital kind of carbon footprint of our activities when we do things digitally. And how to be aware of that footprint and what are the ways to reduce it. The other aspect was talking about the kind of low-tech aspect or low-fidelity tech, because the high fidelity usually means lots of data and lower fidelity means lower amount of data, but it can be equally engaging and interesting, to construct something, to build something. It's not necessarily always about fancy 3D environments. Then we had a panel on digital well-being, and we had a panelist, Amy Orban, who is really researching in neuroscience and the effects on brains when young people explore digital media. And it was interesting to hear the insights from the research and understanding that actually so much is unknown, and we always be careful about judging the effects. Often I see people kind of putting some negative things, but I think there was clear message. We don't know everything, but also we know that it's not only definitely negative effects, there are a lot of positive effects as well, so it's good to see both. Yeah, and the last panel actually on emerging technologies, on AI, on VR, it was really interesting to hear the practices. And me myself, I actually enrolled to one online course on artificial intelligence, so really interesting stuff. Every panel, people were really excited to mention different things, and people catching, I think, different aspects depending on where they are from, what is the context of their work. And I think for every panel we had people were saying, about digital rights, about emerging technologies, about well-being of young people. So I cannot name really one thing because every panel had its own focus, and people were, catching upon different aspects that panelists mentioned, so I cannot say just one thing. When we went online, so the first activity was residential, but then we went online. We started with maybe a classical tools like a meeting on Zoom, And then we thought of also a bit switching to a different digital space, which would be more 3D space perhaps, a space which feels a bit more natural. So when really people can move in space and they can get to smaller groups. So we used one tool that is called Miba, and that's a 3D space where you get into there, you see each other faces through the video, but then people are like small robots flying around. And it was great space because it feels much more natural as people can get into smaller groups, they can chat there and you don't hear the others. So you really feel like in a virtual room. And then after that, after a couple of times when our group grew, we had a limitation. So we had to move to another space that could accommodate more people, and we used Gather Town. So Gather Town is not 3D space, it's more 2D, more like an old style arcade type of thing. But still, it's a spatial audio, meaning that if people move away from a certain space, you don't hear them and they can have their private conversation. A very customizable space as well. And lessons learned from there was that whichever space we use, if we start using new space, there is always a learning curve. So it takes time for people to learn. And we need to invest time to onboard people so people can try out, experiment, ask questions, and learn about the tool. The second lesson learned was that because it's a new tool, for people it can be quite stressful, and challenging at the beginning. So if there is no big reason to change the tool, we can stay with the same tool for a certain period of time until people feel comfortable about it. Yeah. Another lesson learned is always to evaluate, to which extent that digital space, even it can be really nice and fancy, to which extent it's accessible, usable, and useful for our purposes. So because every space has its own pros and cons. They have some really cool features and some features missing. So we as facilitators always need to see where is the good balance and how to make sure that for people it's a good experience of being there, communicating, socializing, and learning together. Yeah, in terms of accessibility or inclusiveness of digital spaces, I think we always need to hear the needs of participants, to hear what is that they need, what would make space good for them, and to make sure we hear, everyone who's involved. And then responding to those needs that people have, right? So it could be a technological level need, meaning that we have to adapt a digital environment to the devices that people are using and they have. We cannot expect people really, buying a new laptop because we chose a fancy environment. So I think that's also having this balance in the accessibility and usability of that tool. Then I think what is important is really having a proper amount of time for onboarding and developing skills how to use that space. Yeah, because someone maybe with lower skills or someone who needs more time to learn, they need to catch up and feel enough comfortable to use that space. Yeah, and of course we need to see at how much that space has accessibility functions. Meaning if someone is hard of hearing, is there a way that the speech is transformed to text? If someone has difficulties with seeing or some sight challenges, then is there a technology to transform images into descriptive text? Yeah, so how much the navigation is really useful and the navigation is easy enough for people in that digital space. So it's quite certain things to take into consideration, to test, and also ask people when they are using it, to ask how is it for them? Is it something challenging for them? And then we can see how we can solve these challenges. If talking about trainers and digital youth work or training in the field of digital youth work, there are a few aspects. One aspect is being curious what is around us, what are the new developments, what are the tools, what are the approaches, and spending some time experimenting, I think, finding out how it may work. And then being also okay that you're gonna experiment, and sometimes you're gonna experiment already with the group of participants because you need a number of people to see how it works. And also being okay that you may fail or something won't work. So there's, I think, this aspect of vulnerability that you need to be okay with, because I think being a trainer in digital youth work field, it means trying out lots of new stuff and being okay to test things and be open and transparent about it. I think definitely it involves a bit following trends and what is happening, so the aspect of curiosity is important there, and really working on your own skills, because I think it's hard to be a trainer in digital youth work without trying out stuff yourself, you know. So you need to really do things or be in digital spaces or use them for yourself to be able to feel at ease. And because trainer or facilitator means you make learning process easier for others. So you need to understand how that process works for you. My closing thoughts, I think, would be related more to in general with the youth work system and digital transformation. Digital transformation is happening. I think it's acknowledged already. But for the youth work to be able to embrace digital changes, there are few things that require attention and investment, which cannot happen just within the system or just among youth workers. I think youth work itself, yes, they need competence development, but also there is a big need for infrastructure investment, meaning there is a need for investing into that type of youth work from the municipalities, from governments, and so on. And I think there has to be a bit of mindset change that if we want to embrace digital transformation, it requires experimentation and it requires permission to fail, meaning there should be programs and possibilities for youth workers, for youth groups, for youth organizations to try out new things, experiment with them, and maybe also see that, we failed in doing something and not being somehow punished by that, So really having funding for trying out new things and understanding how things work, to be able to make sense out of it, and to understand what is useful for youth work. Otherwise, I think if always the sector is being pushed to deliver and show the results and always succeed, it can be a bit of a tricky situation. So more openness, investment into competences, investment into infrastructure, and I think a mindset change that is needed, I think, for the youth sector to develop further into that direction.